T.O. Blaze.
Hey there, this is Tio, bringing you another Kerbal Space Program video, and I am super excited to share this one with you guys. This is a challenge that I'd set for myself a while back, and I've been kind of putting it off, but I have been wanting to build a reusable booster for some time now, and spent some of my free time daydreaming about how I might accomplish such a feat, such a task, and hopefully you guys will enjoy the footage that you are seeing unravel in front of you. This is the initial booster design. I started to build the bottom. I started to put engines on it. Decided I need to figure out what the payload's going to be like, so then I can start to see what my thrust to weight ratio needs to be like, and my fuel efficiency and all that sort of stuff. So I've kind of paused the booster, and now let's take a look at the payload. The payload's just going to basically be an intermediate stage, and the final payload being, in this case, a satellite. I figured that would be the simplest. And again, I mentioned in multiple videos before, I enjoy making satellites. Sometimes they look similar, sometimes they're a little unique and different, but for this video, just need something simple that can put itself into orbit. Can probably go to the Mun or Minmus or somewhere further. I'm kind of playing around with that lower engine, because I know it's probably going to need a light while it's still in the atmosphere. Come to find out, apparently the swivel is actually pretty decent for this application. So yeah, that's it for the satellite, the payload. I'm also going to tweak the fairing here in a second, because I'm realizing how I want this to be refit on the booster. Let's say the booster goes up and launches, and this vehicle takes off into space. The booster's going to come back and land. I need an identical payload that I can just slap back on top of that booster. So there you see the fairing is now separated into two pieces, which gives me a piece of rocket that I can actually attach to with a decoupler or something like that. So now that I've got my payload attached to the top of the booster, I get an idea of the mass, the total mass, and the thrust to weight that I need to be able to work with in order to get this thing off the ground reliably. So I'm playing with some different engines. There you see I'm putting a permanent shroud kind of around the engine so that I got something to attach landing struts to. I haven't had the best of luck with landing struts, and I enjoy working with hinges and structural parts. So there you see I'm using some pads with some alligator hinges, and I've got them set to an action group. So when I hit the number 1 key, they toggle position. And let's see. So I've also got some fins on the bottom. I've got some air brakes. So this is a test flight of the booster, just to kind of get a proof of concept that I can actually, number one, achieve flight with this, and it's relatively stable, and then see if I can boost it back to the KSC. And there you see I was obviously having some issues. So number one, the engine wasn't powerful enough, and number two, well, let's see, I didn't do it in that example of the VAB, but I'm going to have another issue here in a second. So now the engine's much more powerful. It also gimbals a whole lot. I even reduced the gimbal. I almost never leave the Vector engine at full gimbal, because it gimbals so much. So, and there you see my new issue is keeping this thing bottom heavy. So I'm gonna go ahead and let the flight play out, but I'm gonna go back to the VAB here in a second and make some adjustments. So one thing I'll do is I'm gonna add some RCS thrusters to the top, but I'm also gonna change the priority of the fuel tank. So the bottom one's going to drain after the top one, so the weight of the whole vehicle will stay low. And let's go ahead and test that and see. There we go. Bottom side facing down. The RCS was kind of helpful, but I don't really need it. And let's see if we can just land. And that's a proof of concept. I'm happy with that. Very happy with that. So now let's go back and let's take a look at what the refit vehicle could look like. So again, the top section of this rocket is replaceable. So I'm going to tinker around with a couple different options. Do I want to use decouplers? Do I want to use docking ports? And ultimately, I'm going to stick with the decoupler. Does it need to be, attached and detached, reattached, detached, nothing like that. It's kind of a one-time use. So here you see I'm just kind of getting a feel for how tall this thing is going to need to be, and I'm immediately curious how strong the alligator clip's going to be, and then eventually the piston that I'm going to use. The robotic parts are not infinitely strong, so sometimes mass becomes an issue. The parts get too heavy, and moving them around with those robotic parts while on the surface of Kerbin specifically can be problematic. So that's going to be one of the first things I'm anxious to test. So There you see the body of this rover. It's one giant fuel tank. That's enough to refill both of the lower tanks on the booster. And that's very important to make the booster reusable. So I'm going to make sure that all the robotic parts and struts and whatnot that attach to the top section of this rocket payload are capable of transferring fuel. That's something I'm going to have to keep in mind here in a moment. You'll see me adding a fuel line. So I know this thing's going to need to be adjustable vertically. So there you see the piston. The alligator clip just going to get it up in the right orientation, and then the piston's going to help me lower it. And here you see I'm just, again, testing the robotic parts. This thing lifts, it rotates, so I'm pretty happy. Maybe do a few fine-tuning adjustments. Oh, and there you see the parts got all wonky. Sometimes KSP does things like that, so no worries. I think sometimes it has to do with the order in which you assemble the parts, and then when you create a new root part, that order reverses, and sometimes the game does not like that. So I kind of had to rebuild it from scratch, but I knew the order of the parts, so rebuilding it wasn't so bad. And here you see I'm gonna test driving the rover. I hate these giant wheels. They don't turn very well, obviously, and so it's gonna be a little bit of footage here to get me all the way over to the booster. But this is just a proof of concept. Kind of want to see how close I can get if I can get right up to the booster, raise the boom, raise the piston, lower it into position, see how that's all going to work. I was super excited at this point because everything seems to be looking pretty good so far. All right, so kind of ooching up to the booster. Now I detached some struts, so the payload's kind of starting to be a little wobbly, but that's okay. I've got the traverse rate on both the cylinder and the hinge cranked all the way down, so that as I make adjustments, it's ideally going to be a little less wobbly. But I mean, as you can see, it's still pretty wobbly. But bumped the booster a couple times. Thankfully, the booster is relatively stable. It's not knocking over or anything like that. So now I'm going to try to feather this thing down and get it lined up. I'm also going to probably, here in a second, adjust the clamping force. And there you see, I realized I forgot to detach. I actually forgot to stage that large docking port on the top of the booster. So there you just saw me knock it off. That was just sort of let's see if we can make this work in the field. And it actually works. So it's on the ground. It's not hurting anything down there. And there you see, I got it docked. Super excited at this point. Transferring fuel. I was very concerned that the attachment, as soon as it attached, the Kraken was just going to rip the whole thing apart because I've got that piston and that hinge under tension. And here you see a critical design flaw. I was not able to select the right probe core. So I'm launching as a test, but the vehicle was facing in the wrong direction. And so anyway, we're going to fix that in the design here in a second. That was all just for proof of concept. So I was pretty happy with where I got with that. So here I'm going to make a few modifications to the rover. I decided I don't need a crew member. I'm moving that probe core down to the bottom. I'm going to swap out those 400 volt or 400 charge batteries for these 4,000. And I think that's about all the changes that I'm going to make to the rover. Pretty satisfied with the rover. All things considered. Again, those wheels I'm not a huge fan of, but it is what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this booster too, make a few small design tweaks. So there you see I'm staging that large docking port so that I won't forget to detach it. And I'm also going to try to set that probe core to custom group number 2. And then as a last ditch, way to control this thing vertically, I added a smaller probe core, just there you saw, right under the antenna. So I should be able to gain control of this thing from the top of the rocket whenever I'm ready to. So right now I want to be controlling the bottom portion of the rocket because that's the reusable part of the booster. The top portion, in this case, is going to be lost to the ocean because unfortunately in KSP1 you can't control 2 crafts at the same time. So I'm going to get myself on a pretty decent trajectory. There you see my apoapsis is way up at 64 kilometers. And this I'm just staging the top section of the rocket so that I could see what the Delta V was. So I'm very happy with the top section of the rocket. Let's pretend that it's on its way into orbit right now. And let me see if I can land this booster. This is my second attempt at landing the booster. I don't know if you happened to see me load a quick save there a moment ago. And it obviously lands. Yes, the first attempt didn't have quite enough Delta V. I spent too much. I basically flew too high into the atmosphere and ended up using up too much of my fuel. But I'm very happy with that landing zone. It's not at the KSC. It's about 10 kilometers away from the KSC, but that is manageable. And there you see my first booster off to the right, or to the left there. So this footage is sped up a lot, because you'll see here in a second, I can't get up the hill. So these rover tires, they are what they are, man. You gotta work with what you got. So I'm gonna try to tack my way up the hill left and right. Halfway through this trek, I realized I get more traction if I'm turning for some reason, like just full throttle straight ahead is less traction, and I tend to slow down more than if I'm just slightly turning left and right. So like I said, I'm kind of tacking left and right up the hill, trying to get to this booster way out here. If it were significantly further than this, I either would have redone the launch and tried to land a little closer to the KSC. I'm also not above cheating and opening up the Alt F12 and teleporting this rover to the rocket, basically, because in theory, it could take a couple hours to get out there. That's not so bad in real life. So I am super excited at this point in the mission. The rover's all the way there. I've quick saved 1,000 times between the KSC and to this point. So let's see. We've already done this once before. For all intents and purposes, the design is the same to this point. The only thing that's going to be different here in a second is I should be able to control the rocket from the top section more easily once I get this thing landed on there. So I've already had a little bit of practice. There you see I'm increasing the clamping force so that the two sections of the rocket will hopefully kind of suck towards each other. There you see I'm lowering the grid fins, kind of getting those things out of my way. I probably should have done that when I landed the booster in the first time, but didn't think about it. And I'm going to go ahead and line myself up a little bit closer to where I need to be, kind of slightly off alignment there. And yeah, same as last time, just kind of trying to, I say feather it in, but there I'm just kind of slamming the top section into the booster. But looks like that alignment's so close. It's gonna be close, right? Oh, it looks like it's there. And it's bit. Nice. So we're connected. F5, save immediately. Now let's refuel. And we'll carefully select the top probe core. We'll detach the rover. Go through our little brief system check. Make sure the engines are staged correctly. Kind of take it somewhat slowly. I'm anxious to get off the ground because the longer everything sits here, the more likely we are to get a Kraken attack. But there you see I was able to grab the remote guidance unit. I wasn't going to rely on my action group. I used the guidance unit. Unfortunately, switching to the rover right here, when I switched back to the rocket, the probe core was no longer selected correctly. So I'm not sure if I left the footage in here or not, but I'm gonna have to quick save. Hey, I'm gonna have to load and learn from that mistake. So I've got the vehicle still detached. Thankfully, that's where I had quick saved. So selecting the correct probe core again, and let's get this baby off the ground. There you see I'm triple checking my staging. Got my my vector engine back on the bottom. Everything else seems to be staged correctly. So I'm going to take the exact same trajectory as before. I'm going to get up to, 40, 50, 60 kilometer apoapsis. And then I'm going to stage, and let's pretend the booster's going to go back and land and could be reused again. So this is getting to be the end of the mission. Very, very super excited to this point. I'm confident that this vehicle could get to orbit from this point. So thank you guys for watching the video. I don't know if you're as interested in reusable rockets as I am. This was a blast. This was a lot of fun. So thank you for tuning in. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment. I'm going to start trying to review my comments. I appreciate you guys for tuning in.